In the Netherlands, representatives of several nations from the International Court of Hague called for a total and immediate arms embargo against the Israeli government. On Thursday, the president of Palestine, Mahmoud Abbas, called for the immediate international intervention to stop the Israeli genocide against the Palestinian people. And the foreign minister of China asked the Shanghai Cooperation Organization to assume the role of a stabilizing anchor in times of change and turbulence. Hello from the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Caracas, Venezuela. This is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Casara, and now we go to the news. The sessions of the International Court of Justice in The Hague on the legal consequences of the Israeli occupation on the Gaza Strip reached its fourth day. The commissioners highlighted the requests made by the United Nations reporters to carry out the weapons withdrawn by the Israeli occupation army. The proposal is based on the commitment of the states to guarantee the respect for international peace as it is required by the Geneva Convention. They also assure that the decision of the International Court of January 26 emphasizes the need for this procedure. The occupying forces carrying out the genocidal operation in Gaza abandoned the Nasser hospital, leaving destruction and death behind them. The Palestinian Health Ministry confirmed in a statement the complete withdrawal of the Zionist troops. No hostages, no terrorists, no tunnels to report. They leave the largest hospital in Han Yunis completely destroyed, where patients and staff are without supplies and medical equipment. Hostilities continue outside this health center, which was also the second largest in the Palestinian enclave. The international organization Doctors Without Borders accused the United States and the United Nations Security Council of encouraging the slaughter of thousands of Palestinians. The Secretary General of this organization, Christopher Lockyer, presented a raw narration of the deadly reality of his doctors in the Strip. In a heartbreaking testimony, Lockyer explained how his teams have had to amputate children's limbs without anesthetizing them, detailed how mothers in labor receive minimal care in unhygienic plastic tents, and he also stated that many children confess to their doctors that they would rather die than live orphaned and mutilated. The delegation of the Palestinian movement Hamas, led by Ismail Haniyeh, the head of the movement's political bureau, concluded its visit to Egypt, which lasted several days, according to a press statement issued by the Hamas leader's office. The Hamas statement announcing the end of the visit detailed that they held meetings with Israeli officials and with the head of the Egyptian intelligence services, Abbas Kamel. The Israeli hostages and the Palestinian hostages were part of the agenda, as well as the flow of humanitarian aid to the north of the Strip and the current tensions around the Al-Aqsa Mosque. The delegation continues the travels, now going to Paris. The Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas calls for immediate international intervention to stop the Israeli genocide against the Palestinian people. The head of the state made this known during a meeting held in Ramallah with the president of the Red Crescent Society, condemning the policies of assassinations and attacks, both by the occupation forces and the settlers. He also demanded an end to the war of starvation against the civilian population that is being brutally besieged. During the meeting, Abbas blamed Israel for disease, famine, and epidemics because it prevents the entry of food, medical, and humanitarian aid. During an interview for TeleSUR, Cuban Deputy Foreign Minister Anayansi Rodriguez said that appealing to the International Court of Justice is a fundamental step in the face of the United States' opposition to the ceasefire against Palestine.
The International Court of Justice is precisely the highest international tribunal or judicial body of the United Nations, and appealing to that court is an essential step in times where, for example, instances such as the United Nations Security Council have been unable to fulfill their mandate and have demonstrated a pathological incapacity to act precisely because of the sustained veto of the United States, which is one of its permanent members.
Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at TeleSUR English, where you will find the news in different formats, news updates and more. Other stories coming up, stay with us.
In a world that doesn't stop, we give you space to keep up to date. Take a moment, breathe, and take care of your physical and mental health. Balance your well-being.
Welcome back to From the South. In Venezuela, the people of the state of Apure received the president Nicolás Maduro Moros during a caravan as a show of solidarity and support to his government. During the presidential day, Productive Wednesday, from the plains of the country, the head of state maintained direct contact with the population of that region, where he made several announcements of a productive nature. During the activity, the president approved the implementation of the plan for the recovery of the interurban roads, as well as the water supply system for the towns and the distribution for irrigation. And the new executive secretary of ALBA TCP, Venezuelan diplomat Jorge Arreaza, congratulated the people and the government of St. Lucia on the commemoration of the 45th anniversary of its independence through his account on X. In his post, the Venezuelan diplomat indicated that it is an honor to accompany the people of St. Lucia and its government on the 45th anniversary of its independence. He also said that for ALBA TCP, the countries of the Eastern Caribbean are a true example of dignity and sovereignty. Furthermore, he congratulated Prime Minister Philippe J. Pierre on the occasion of this celebration. In Colombia, mobilizations and sit-ins were held at the Supreme Court of Justice headquarters and the facilities of the Attorney General's office to demand the prompt election of a new Attorney General. Groups of demonstrators expressed their demand for the immediate appointment of this high-ranking official. One of the major complaints by the citizens is that the investigative entity is headed by the Deputy Attorney General, Martha Mancera, accused of covering up for the ex-director of the technical investigative body of Buenaventura linked to drug trafficking networks until the Supreme Court of Justice defines the position. In Brazil, President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva received the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov on Thursday. Topics of vital relevance were discussed in the meeting. According to official sources, they reviewed the bilateral agenda and the issues related to the new global governance and the BRICS. They agreed on the need to face challenges such as artificial intelligence, global conflicts, among other issues. President Lula also reiterated that his willingness to cooperate with the peace in Ukraine. For his part, Lavrov congratulated President Lula on the organization of the G20 foreign ministers meeting in Rio de Janeiro and convened President Putin's message of support for the Brazilian presidency of the group. At a press conference after the G20 foreign ministers meeting in Brazil, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov calls the reaction of Western countries to the death of Alexei Navalny hysterical, adding that Western officials have no right to interfere in their internal affairs.
They act like both the prosecutor and the judge, and as the executor of punishments, and all this in one. All this hysteria over the death of Navalny has shown this convincingly, and I don't even want to comment about this in detail. These people have no right to interfere in our internal affairs. No, I was not looking for these contacts. They apparently followed the agreement to avoid contacts with our delegation in every possible way. Well, let them be trapped in their own ways. In fact, they have been doing this for a long time.
And the Brazilian Foreign Minister Mauro Vieira informed that during the preparatory meeting for the G20
there were several requests for the immediate release of humanitarian access in Palestine, and there were calls for a cessation of hostilities. Many positioned themselves against the announced Israeli operation in Rafah and called on the Israeli government to reconsider and suspend this decision immediately. The support for the two-state solution was also unanimously highlighted as the only possible solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
Likewise, the head of Brazilian diplomacy stressed the need to reform multilateral institutions to adapt to global challenges.
The global governance reform was discussed, which for Brazil is urgent and a priority, and all agreed on the fact that the main multilateral institutions, the UN, the World Trade Organization, the World Bank, and the International Monetary Fund, among others, need partial reform to adapt to the challenges of today's world.
In Argentina, the Secretary of International Relations of the Workers' Central Union, Gerardo Martinez, met on Thursday with the Deputy Director of the International Monetary Fund, Gira Gopinath, who was visiting the country. Both analyzed the worrisome socio-economic situation and its impact on labor and production. The meeting, which lasted several hours at the IMF's metropolitan headquarters in the capital of Buenos Aires, served, according to the leader, for the organization to obtain first-hand information from the workers severely affected by the situation in the country. He also said that in order to meet IMF targets, productive investment policies must be generated to produce income and the economic growth in general. In Argentina, the debates on the National Emergency Decree, the DNU, which will last for 10 days, began. The Permanent Bicameral Commission of Legislative Procedures began the treatment of the DNU 70 of economic deregulation issued by the government of Javier Milei. Until the next 7th of March, it will be defined if the decree meets the requirements of necessity and urgency, and if it does not legislate over the Constitution to establish its possible enforce. In order for the Commission to invalidate the decree, the rejection of both chambers is necessary. Otherwise, the DNU will be enacted and in effect. Argentina's presidential spokesperson, Manuel Adorni, announced the closure of the National Institute Against Discrimination, Xenophobia and Racism, the INADI, and anticipated that it will be the first of other agencies to be eliminated during the current administration. The spokesperson affirmed that the closure of certain agencies will be by decree, but in others it will be enough with the decision taken by each minister according to the structures and the number of workers. Adorni assured that this and other agencies have often had the particularity of being directed by officials that he described as of questionable quality. The removal of INADI sparked a controversy since several politicians began to explain that Milei does not have the legal powers to carry out this measure. Now we move on to other topics. In Haiti, concerns are growing in the wake of the U.S. interference in the internal affairs of the country as it seeks to allegedly halt de-escalating violence in the Caribbean nation. Members of political organizations give their opinion.
What
we Haitians are living through is not easy. We helped many nations fight for their independence, including the United States. But today it's the United States government that is against us. Seeking to destroy us, physically and morally. The U.S. power structure dumps guns and drugs in Haiti. If they really want to change here, they could help us. They don't. We're not against the U.S. people. We're just asking for a chance. We're exhausted. We don't have true independence. We're fighting to determine our own destiny. Every nation deserves freedom. We don't want no one stepping on us. We are the sons and daughters of Africa and of the land. We will never lose the battle, ever onward to victory.
And we have a final short break coming up. But before, we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience. You can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with TeleSUR. We have a final short break. Don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi affirmed that the members of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization must become a stabilizing factor in the midst of the strong changes the world is going through. This was stated during his speech this Friday at the ceremony to commemorate the 20th anniversary of the Secretariat of the organization. One mentions that the world is witnessing changes never seen in a century, and also that it is essential to boost the spirit of the organization and work together to make it bigger and stronger. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, genocide continues by Western countries in order to steal its riches, a reality forgotten by the international community. The escalation of tensions with its neighbor Rwanda was once again brought to the forefront the desperate situation they have been suffering for decades. In the last week alone, more than 135,000 people fled the city of Sake due to fighting between the M23 rebels and the Congolese armed forces. The recent conflict has already left 2.5 million people displaced. Senegal's outgoing president, Macky Sall, said on Thursday his mandate would end as planned on April the 2nd, but left open the date of the presidential election, which he postponed earlier this month. Sall had faced a growing clamor to set a date for the vote after his abrupt delay to the February 25th election triggered weeks of political crisis. The outgoing president had announced the election delay hours before official campaigning was due to begin, with Parliament backing the move despite strong opposition, and then setting a new election date for mid-December. During a televised press interview, Sall said the date for the election will be decided after a political political dialogue he intends to conduct as of Monday. In France, the Eiffel Tower is closed by the General Confederation of Labour and Workers' Force Unions on the fourth consecutive day. The poor condition of the Eiffel Tower and inefficient economic management are the main complaints raised. The unions of the General Confederation of Labour denounce the existence of an ambitious and unsustainable economic model due to an underestimation of budgets and an overestimation of income. The monument is one of the biggest tourist attractions of the country, which receives annually about 5 million visitors, which generates a very large income system. In Spain, protests in the agricultural sector were marked on Wednesday by controversial clashes between farmers and riot police. The rural sector converged in Madrid at the gates of the Ministry of Agriculture, where they were affected by confrontations and aggressions. Farmers and ranchers demand from the government an increase in subsidies, an end to unfair competition from products coming from third countries, and the suspension of environmental and animal protection regulations. And the tragic fire in the residential buildings in Valencia, Spain, on Thursday has officially claimed 4 fatal victims, while 19 people still remain missing. Valencia's Deputy Director General for Emergencies, Jorge Suarez, reported in a press conference that the search and rescue services had so far found 4 bodies inside the burning buildings. Firefighters are reportedly working around the clock to locate the missing people, whose families have been unable to contact them since the fire broke out. The blaze started on the 4th floor of a 14-storied residential building on Thursday and rapidly spread to the rest of the floors and to another residential complex next to it. And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief, but remember you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. Also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.